Earlier this week, the Santa Fe County District Attorney's Office dropped the charges against Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez-Reed that accounted for probably the biggest, more significant amounts of jail time for the shooting death of Halyna Hutchins while filming the movie Rust and on set in New Mexico. Why in the world would the DA do this? Did someone make some kind of a mistake here? And what does this mean for the future of these two cases? Let's get into it. So if you're not familiar with the charges that were filed against Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez-Reed for the death of Halyna Hutchins, I recently did a video that went into the charges, the background of the case, and how the evidence kind of stacks up in the cases so far. So if you need to brush up on that information, there is a link in the description below, so you can click on that and get right up to speed. Otherwise, let's continue on to see what exactly happened here with these drop charges. So first, remember that the Santa Fe County DA filed 2 charges of involuntary manslaughter for each defendant. 2 charges for Alec Baldwin and 2 charges for Halyna Gutierrez-Reed. And the 2 charges that were filed against Alec Baldwin were identical to the ones that were filed against Halyna Gutierrez-Reed. In the first charge for involuntary manslaughter for each defendant, the government would have to prove that the defendant was guilty of killing Halyna Hutchins while doing something dangerous while being criminally negligent. Although this has the word negligent in it, don't be fooled. Criminal negligence means that the defendant was actually more than negligent. Specifically, it means that they were acting with recklessness as to the safety of others around them. The second charge that was filed against each of them, however, had a lower mental state standard because it was enhanced by New Mexico's law concerning the safe handling of a firearm. So because Hutchins died from a gunshot wound, with this particular charge, the government had to show that the defendant was acting negligently while handling a firearm. And according to TMZ, the Santa Fe County DA just dropped the second charge filed in both Baldwin's and Gutierrez-Reed's cases. In other words, the charge that was dropped was actually the firearm enhancement charge, the one that was easier for the government to prove and carried a longer sentence. As a result, the maximum jail time that both defendants are looking at is more like 18 months as opposed to like 5 years. So why would this happen? First, it's important to note that this decision was actually not made by the judge. This was the DA's office that withdrew the charges on their own after Baldwin's legal team filed a motion on February 10th requesting that this charge be dropped. The legal reason why Baldwin's team said that this should be dropped was because of the fact that at the time that the incident actually occurred, this specific law was not in effect as it's written right now. And they said that this incident doesn't meet the requirements of the old law as it was written at the time. Specifically, up until 7 months after this incident occurred, the old law as it was written said that in order for someone to be criminally liable under this particular law, they also had to not just negligently handle a firearm, but also to brandish it. And brandishing has a very specific legal definition. Under New Mexico law, it's displaying or making a firearm known to another person with intent to intimidate or injure a person. And regardless of whether you think that Baldwin was being negligent, reckless, egotistical, what have you, there doesn't seem to be any evidence here to suggest that Baldwin ever specifically intended to intimidate or injure Hutchins or really anyone else on set, at least in this particular instance and with this firearm. So now, before the judge had a chance to really make a decision on the motion anyway, the DA decided to just drop this particular charge as to both defendants. And I'll tell you, while I've enjoyed Alec Baldwin's performances, maybe not all, but most of them over the years, I personally don't ever want to meet him in person. I hope I never meet the guy, really, because I think he's kind of an asshole. But despite my general dislike for the way that he comports himself and the way that he comes across as like this narcissistic, pompous jerk, I'm sorry, I'm just telling it like it is. I have to say that I 100% agree with the DA's decision to drop this charge. And the reason for that is because the judge probably would have dropped it in about 2 seconds anyway if given the opportunity to do so because of the constitutional rights of the defendants. You see, there's this concept that says that when a new criminal law is passed, particularly where that law either criminalizes certain behavior or restricts the ways in which someone can perform a particular act, or that makes a punishment more burdensome, it cannot work retroactively to incidents that occurred before the law was passed. As an example, let's say tomorrow Congress decides to pass a law saying that making videos talking about law for YouTube is a criminal act and therefore illegal, and that becomes law tomorrow. But I make a video and upload it today, I can't be criminally charged for the act of making that video and uploading that video today if that is still legal today, but tomorrow it becomes illegal. This concept is rooted first in the constitutional rights to due process, as well as the general idea that our criminal laws are, generally speaking, intended to deter people from engaging in particular behaviors. And if you think about it, you can't exactly deter someone from doing something that they've already done. So all of that is to say that if the DA decided to continue to pursue that second charge for both defendants, with the law as it's currently written, this would be considered an ex post facto application of new law. In other words, the application of new law to a past incident, which is clearly unconstitutional, which means dropping the charge was absolutely the right call. But it also leads to an interesting question. There's been a lot of media attention on this whole case ever since the incident initially happened, obviously. And although it does feel like it took a long time for these charges to be filed in the first place, it's not like this is a super old case. The incident happened, I don't know, a little over a year ago. So the fact that this law changed in between the incident that happened in October 2021 and the time in which they decided to file the charges in January of this year, that arguably should have been something that the DA's office was tracking. To give some perspective on this, one of the reasons why it's generally considered a better idea to hire a lawyer for a particular problem, someone who only practices in a certain specific area or areas of law, is because over time, they know the ins and outs of this practice area. And when the law changes, they also keep track of it very closely as well. As an example, I was practicing employment litigation in California when the California Supreme Court handed down its decision in Dynamax. This was the case that fundamentally changed the definition of what it meant to be an employee versus an independent contractor in California. When that happened, for employment lawyers, it was like breaking news. It would have been weird to come across a lawyer working in employment law in California at the time that didn't know about this important change in the law. And the same thing basically happens too when a particular legislature changes laws by statute in a certain practice area. Literature will get passed around, articles will be written, basically warning all of the lawyers practicing in this area saying, hey, heads up, the law changes on January 1st, be prepared for it. So in a case as high profile as this one, where the law has only recently changed in a case that really isn't that old, how did the Santa Fe County DA miss this? In my opinion, it is a little bit, oh, hi. What's your opinion, Kat? Where was I? Oh, okay, bye. Oh yeah, in my opinion, this is a little bit embarrassing for the DA's office. Now, for their part, the DA spokeswoman, Heather Brewer, said that the enhancement charge was being dropped, quote, to avoid further litigious distractions by Mr. Baldwin and his attorneys, and that, quote, the priority is securing justice, not securing billable hours for big city attorneys. To me, this kind of feels like a verbal version of like when you trip over a curb and try to make it look like you meant to do that. Like, I didn't trip, I was dancing. It's not exactly convincing, but I understand how they're trying to smooth that out a little bit. But it could be asked whether the DA was like trying to pull a fast one on Baldwin and Gutierrez-Reed as to their constitutional rights. But as to that, I really don't think so. If the DA's office thought that they could get away with some kind of unconstitutional behavior here, I don't think they would have dropped the charges so quickly, and particularly before the judge had a chance to really look at the motion or at least make a decision on it. And at any rate, this is, like I said, a high-profile case. It seems less likely that they would do it in a case like this as opposed to one that no one's really paying attention to. Rather, to me, this one just kind of smells like a big oopsie.
I've made a huge mistake.
But let me know what you think. Do you think that the DA was trying to pull a fast one, trying to get away with something dirty, or did they just make some kind of an analytical error here? Do you think that the charge was properly dropped in either case? Are you happy? Are you disappointed? Let me know how you feel about this. Let us know all of that in the comments down below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this video or at least found it interesting or informative. And if you did, I would love it if you could hit the like button. It does help us with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you want to see more content like this and you haven't done so already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can find out when the next video is uploaded. See you in the next video.